Welcome into the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It's me, Jagger, Maye, and with me as always is our Dynasty Captain, Jeff Bell. And we have a very special training camp episode. As I promised you guys, we're going to be hitting the beats hard, and I meant that literally. We brought on Matt Olson from 32 Beat Writers, and we had Jeff go through this morning and take the spiciest training camp headlines, and we're going to break those down. But I mean, we did say no to a couple things because we didn't want to get too deep in those trenches, and that's more of a reason why you should go over to 32 Beat Writers website and become a Patreon member for all those deep cuts if you want them. We're going to start off with the juiciest training camp news, which is Brandon Aiyuk and Ricky Pearsall. The saga continues. Me and Jeff have a unspoken bet. He thinks that Brandon Aiyuk stays a 49er. I think he's gone. So, Matt, you know more than you know as much as anybody besides a 49ers beat reporter. We got a new report that says that he is more likely going to be gone than he does to sign an extension. Do you think that's true?
I mean, we take Twitter with a grain of salt, right?
I
Honestly,
don't. I'm just kidding.
the other aggregate accounts love you. Honestly, I think where there's smoke, there's fire with a lot of these things. I think the 49ers can get by without him, especially because of the Pearsall scenario. He's had a decent camp. He's had some growing pains, though, which have become relevant over the last 2 days, which we got to remember he's a rookie. We fantasy football the last 2 years has ruined us because rookies have performed. And I think we just get so excited about them. And because of that, and then we get situations like this where just because you're a first round talent, and there's multiple wide receivers in this draft that are first round talents or were picked in the first round that might not be first round talents, and we might have to temper expectations. That being said, if I had to pick, I think Aiyuk's gone. There was very surface level reports that there's been some teams that have made offers. I saw one about the Patriots about an hour ago. Again, don't know if it's true, but normally when teams start to field multiple offers, it can mean bidding, it can mean transitions, it normally leads to some kind of sink or swim scenario with the situation as a whole.
Yeah, and that you already kind of alluded to my next question was that like we heard early on that when they were in shorts that well he's picking up the offense, he can do whatever we want, and Kyle Shanahan, he wants those versatile guys, and he sounded like a versatile guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now we hear he sucks. So like I don't know where that's at this point. Like, does he suck? Like, again, I know it's training camp and he's a rookie, so I'm just staying pat. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
buying at this point. So is that where you're at?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if you're playing fantasy football, I think regardless of what happens with Aiyuk, he's going to be in a situation where he's going to perform. So you don't really need to worry about that side of things. It's more of the 49ers side of things and
Hmm.
where those balls go because Jennings is no slouch. Kittle can always he's had a couple slower years, but he's still going to get if he's on the field and healthy, he's going to get receptions. So it's not like there's going to be a deficit there if Aiyuk leaves, and if he does, wherever he goes, he will be featured. So it's not a alarming scenario from a fantasy football standpoint either way.
Yeah, yeah, and it's I guess my big question is, Jeff, you've actually had a third option. It's just like there's either poop or get off the pot. What if there's a third option? And it's you said Jawan Jennings, and then there's even stuff about Mike Conley. Um, do you still kind of believe in that, or you still think Jawan Jennings is worth it and might have something early on? And like, I guess, do you still believe that Brandon Ayuk's going to be a 49er?
I think is Jacob Cowing not Mike Conley. Jacob Cowing the name that you're going?
Cowing.
Yeah, Cowing.
Oh.
Why did I say? Grizzlies. I'm sorry.
Yes.
It's the same guy essentially.
no,
You're fine.
Chris Conley. I think it's Chris Conley who's what I was saying on there. As
So Ronnie Bell has supposedly had a good
Mhm.
camp. I picked that up off of 32 beat writers, and that Ronnie Bell has had a good camp. And then I did see a nugget really kind of right before we got on here that what has happened is the gauntlet was thrown down essentially between Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel, and Deebo Samuel has come in motivated and just had an amazing camp. And so I think that that's where the 49ers have shifted potentially and feeling a little bit more comfortable. We've seen when Aiyuk has been out of the lineup. We've seen when Deebo Samuel's been out of the lineup. And it's less that a receiver comes in and picks that up and more that they just give it to Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and the remaining receiver. And so I think that this offense can be fine just giving it to Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel as their primary three options. I mean, that's pretty solid primary three options when you look across the league. And a lot of these receivers that they run in kind of serve complementary roles. And that's where I don't know that I see Jauan Jennings raising above serving a complementary role. Maybe he picks up a couple extra targets. Maybe he is kind of that second wide receiver on the field if Ricky Pearsall really is struggling. But I think they like Ronnie Bell. I think that Jacob Cowing will play a little bit. Chris Conley mentioned that name. That's more of a field stretcher. And so they have these different players that can bring different elements into the offense.
Yeah, and it's to me, this is a dynasty long-term play. Even though I did buy him in like best ball and redraft, I don't really care about redraft, but the ones that I will eventually do, I might try to get him depending on the cost. I haven't really looked at his ADP in a while, but I don't think he's a buy anymore. Like that train's already kind of sailed. He's already raised in value. But to kick it back over to you before we leave the 49ers, do you believe Jeff and like Jauan Jennings might be the guy that like they'll use a wide receiver two by committee and everything else is just going to be Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and CMC?
That's my expectation. Yeah. Jordan Mason's had a really strong offseason. And so I was kind of wondering if maybe they wouldn't like have a little bit more of the run game shift to Jordan Mason or to play Elijah Mitchell in that type of a role and use Christian McCaffrey a little bit more in the passing game as opposed to the heavy run and pass usage he had in the past. I think that that's on the table. But really, when it comes down to it, the way Kyle Shanahan is able to scheme this offense, when you have those three players, Deebo, George Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey, those are the pieces that I would want to hold right now, both in redraft and in Dynasty.
Mm-hmm. And before we move on, guys, make sure to like and subscribe. Especially like we're bringing you guys real beat reporters on here. Like we're gonna hope to get C Salami in here. So it's the perfect time to get in right now. And then more importantly, we have a website as well, which most of you already knew. Go to footballguys.com/plans. Jeff is over there being our own little beat reporter and breaking down all the reports for us. Footballguys.com/plans. And if you want your chance to get in for free for a year, and we got new tools like our Draft Dominator with Live Sync, just put in 32 beat writers. That is our secret phrase. It's so easy. Just comment that. I made that up just now. You can almost see it in my face. Put that in the comments, and then we'll pick a winner. I'll make Joey pick a winner, actually, because that's his job. And he'll reach out to you with your free subscription to footballguys.com. Now, back to it. Back to the training camp hype. It's quarterback suck season, guys. Like I don't know. Are we back at the CJ Stroud Wonderlic test or whatever test that was or not? Right now he's the third string. Me and Jeff were of the belief that we always knew that he might be sitting a year. And more importantly, Sam Darnold. Do you think he's the truth, the prince that was promised for the Vikings for this season at the very least, Matt?
So, great question, because we literally just talked to Alec Lewis of The Athletic, who covers the Vikings, 2 days ago. So we got a pretty good dose of JJ McCarthy from his eyes, and he's definitely a trusted source of us. And it's just the as of right now, I mean, it's Sam Darnold's team to lose. Obviously there's plenty of weapons on that team. I think, you could put one of us at QB and throw the ball to Justin Jefferson, and we might have a chance to stick around for a few games as a starter. He might be that talented. But, I mean, there is going to be some kind of leash. And J.J. McCarthy's looked decent in camp. I mean, he's had growing pains, and we see these practices where he's been, 5 for 13 at some points, and then maybe he's, had a better day. But, I mean, we haven't seen anything stellar. But one thing that I will throw on my J.J. McCarthy hype train is that I do think his athleticism is undervalued. And you have two very good running backs, obviously in Minnesota right now, in Jones and Chandler. I'll say Chandler is definitely a nice underrated pickup this year. Mm-hmm. However, you're going to see, once McCarthy gets in there, a slightly different offense because he does have the mobility that Darnold doesn't have. And according to Alec Lewis, we should see that by the end of the year. So, if you are in Dynasty, I wouldn't be scared to take McCarthy because at some point you're going to see what you get on that investment this year. And as soon as that, and Alec brought up a good point, as soon as the locker room goes, and it could happen, he said it could happen as soon as the end of training camp. If the locker room comes and says, JJ gives us the best chance to win, then guess what? It's going to be JJ's team coming on pretty early. So, let's get the drum beat going because it's going to happen at some point. And, if I had a gun to my head, I would say he's going to be starting sooner than later.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I've said it on the show. Just go get Sam Darnold. He costs nothing right now in Dynasty. Just go get Sam Darnold and you're fine. JJ McCarthy, I drafted him. I still drafted him in like a 109 in Superflex drafts, knowing that hey, this guy might not be good right away. Drake Maye, kind of the same thing. I thought he was a little bit more polished, and it's kind of going to be a good segue to him in a little bit, but we'll hold on that. But same thing, I drafted him ahead of Jane Daniels, knowing that he might need a little bit of work, and I just said, okay, I'll just go get Jacoby Brissett and wait, this is kind of what you have to do right now with these rookies is you got to play the same game that the NFL's doing. You got the rookies cost a premium. You hope you get your guy, but then you just go get a backup just in case, and you go get their backup. And to me, it's just like the troll toll to these rookies that you got to pay the troll toll. Go get Sam Darnold and stop sweating it so you don't do anything stupid. Jeff, do you kind of agree with that with McCarthy, or are you scared at all with any of this news? More importantly, what do you think this means for Justin Jefferson, since he's still considered the wide receiver one by a lot of people, me included?
I believe that either quarterback is going to be able to get the ball to Justin Jefferson. I think that I've seen enough from practice from both of them that I think they can get the ball there. Not having TJ Hockenson in the lineup right now, kind of obviously they're going to focus with both of these quarterbacks on getting the ball to Jefferson, and then Jordan Addison, kind of that complementary piece there. The rest of it, maybe Jalen Naylor as that third receiver, or whoever it ends up being. I don't imagine they'll have a huge role in the offense outside of the backs and Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So I'm confident in both quarterbacks to be able to get those pieces the ball. I've seen enough them making throws. I was really hard on Sam Darnold having the year as quarterback, but I think that Matt makes a great point that we rarely see it play out that way. And especially when we do see it, it's because the team is winning. And I'm not entirely convinced the Vikings are going to be winning games. So when you really look at their schedule, yeah, they got the Giants week 1, but after that, they go to San Francisco, have the Texans, the Packers, the Jets, the Lions, the Rams. I mean, how many games are they going to win there? And that's where, if they're sitting there at 1-5, they're going to put JJ McCarthy in. I feel like, because it's just going to get to that. I don't know that their defense, we've known in the past that defense has struggled. The offensive line's been a little bit iffy. So that's where I think JJ McCarthy is going to play earlier than maybe I thought a couple months ago. But it's a great point. I mean, they certainly are trying very, very hard to make it Sam Darnold's team in the preseason and kind of ease that pressure off McCarthy. And I think that that's their plan. But like Matt said, the team comes to the coach and says, go in there and they're going to put him in there. And one of the things that I want to give Matt a lot of credit. What I love about their account, their Twitter account, and their Patreon that they're putting together is there's no agenda when on your stuff. Like, you guys are just sharing what you're getting. And I think that oftentimes, especially on Twitter, you'll see people that are trying to trick the algorithm for attention, and you guys are not doing any of that stuff. And that's even, it can be difficult with beat writers, and I'm sure you see it, because it's sometimes, I don't know that beat writers necessarily have agendas, but you can have one beat writer say one thing about camp and a second beat writers say something completely different. And I know, like, I've seen with Quentin Johnston, where you're seeing some beat writers are like, holy cow, he looks great, he's making these plays, and then another one will be like, well, he dropped this ball, and like stuff like that. So it's a hard job at what you guys do.
Yeah, definitely vetting the scenario so that we give, our subscribers the information that they actually need. And it's funny, I don't mean to like go off topic here, but we do see a lot of, everyone's always like, well, why are X amount of players, mostly rookies, so hyped by beat writers? And it's not that they're hyped, but we know what CMC is going to do, so we don't need to dive into CMC, And I think the big other thing is sometimes teams just don't have news,
Yeah.
And that is the reality. So I appreciate those kind words, man. We love what we do. I was saying earlier, this is our Christmas, so we're happy you're enjoying it.
Yeah. And it's like you said, man, it's every day. I love that you said it's like every day it's a new report. I don't know. And it's like, you almost kind of have to have a little bit of confirmation bias until you get those concrete things, because like, I'm not going to adjust a lot of my priors based on like literally the wind in training camp and stuff like that. So it's like, and that's where we're at. And like, that's kind of where I'm at with Drake Maye. Like, this is a good segue to go there. You're a Boston guy. I'm assuming you're a Patriots fan, which means you're
unfortunately currently.
Yeah, I know, man. It's we're down bad. Jeff's a Bills fan, so he could care less.
I respect that. It's like I respect that.
We have Drake Maye right now. He's QB 18. He's someone that I've drafted pretty early in Superflex. Jeff's watched me do it. And then Joe Milton at QB 45. I hear Drake Maye's lighting it up. Everyone liked his progress in camp, and it's been the talk. Now I hear he's QB3. Joe Milton is the prince that was promised. Where are we at with this? Is it all BS? Is there some truth in any of it?
I mean, I'm going to start this with, I'm married into a University of Tennessee family, and I go to every Tennessee game that is in Neyland Stadium. Joe Milton is not a great quarterback.
No, he's not.
He's a great athlete to a degree. He is not as athletic as his build makes him seem to be. That being said, obviously everyone is enamored with him being able to, toss the ball 70 air yards, which is pretty awesome. But I would be absolutely floored. I think if I remember correctly, I think it was Colin Cowherd who started this insane theory that I think he actually is on tape saying that he believes Joe Milton's going to be the QB. We were talking about, going for clicks earlier. That might be the biggest one of the offseason. It's Drake Maye is the future of this team. We talked about the bridge from Brissett to Maye. I could see a similar scenario happening if, Brissett fumbles out of the gate, that like we were talking about with Darnold. But I mean, if you want to get cute and you have the bench space, yeah, I guess grab Milton, throw him in your taxi or whatever if you really don't have anyone else. But I would be absolutely shocked if he has any kind of relevance in 2 years.
Yeah, that's like, it's pretty crazy to me. And again, I know Alex Van Pelt has a QB friendly system, but I don't think it's like that QB friendly, because you know who else had a good easy QB friendly system? Tennessee. They had like the easiest, like fluky system. So like,
Mm-hmm.
why wasn't this guy a Heisman candidate? You know who else was? Someone with a lot less talent, as natural talent than he did, over at
Mm-hmm.
the Lions. You know, it's just like you. My best friends are Tennessee guys, and when I told them that, like, hey man, you know, I don't think your guy is a QB1. They're like BS, you know, uh, you're crazy, man. Like I
Sounds
watch
accurate.
every game. Yeah, they're just like losing it. They love their guys, man. So
Mm-hmm.
like I totally get it. I just don't buy it at all. And even I guess Jeff, to kick it over to you, even with this news of Joe Milton, do you think Joe Milton, that QB 45 on keep trade cut, do you think he is worth going out and getting just in case, or you know, it's whatever?
I think that there are more valuable wide receivers and running backs. I mean, if you are, I will not completely rule it out because I've seen some very, very deep settings, and like Matt said, throw a good player on your taxi into super flex. But I think the league has gotten a lot smarter about, like I'm thinking about like Kevin Kolb or these guys that these backups that they play like one or two good games. Who was the guy the Seahawks?
Matt Flynn.
Matt
Matt
Flynn is what.
Flynn.
Yeah,
Yes.
I had it for you. Trust me.
Yes, yeah. That's what I think that there was a window there where teams were just desperate for anybody they
Mhm.
can put in there. But right now, I don't think the league's kind of at that point where a team would desperately throw a third round pick at Joe Milton just because he threw a ball 75 yards in practice and they don't have a quarterback next year. I'm skeptical that would be the case. I think you'd really have to see it on the field before anything kind of happens there, and he's buried. He is not going to play over Drake Maye. He's not going to play over Jacoby Brissett. It's going to be Jacoby Brissett's team until they decide they're ready. And I mean, I don't mean to pick on you guys, but I do think that it seems to me that there's a level with Jared Mayo where he maybe doesn't realize that they're not a good team yet, because I think he keeps talking about like having like playing defense in the run game and all this stuff.
Need to
And
have
it's like,
confidence, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, and I don't blame him because he probably has seen Jacoby Brissett win games there for the Patriots before, but things were very different at that time.
A little different.
Yeah,
yeah. It's we're in the crazy season, and that's like I said, we're gonna factor cap this, as the kids say. I think it's definitely cap a little bit. So moving down the board, Chase Brown. This is I guess a little bit more fire and a lot less smoke. He's the keep trade cut running back 29. Zack Moss is going RB 39. Chase Brown keeps getting all the hype in the Bengals camp. Matt, do you think that's true? Do you think he's Joe Mixon's successor, or is this a little bit more running back by committee and we don't want either?
I mean, it depends what you believe. I mean, the Bengals dropped their depth chart today. Zack Moss is first on that depth chart. You know, it's a scenario we talked about this very briefly earlier, but just because there's no news doesn't mean that means there's no bad news either. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be good to be good. Sometimes no news is good news. It's an expression for a reason. Um I think it's going to be some kind of split early on. We are seeing Chase Brown catch a lot of passes, which is definitely going to add to his value. Now, Zack Moss was no slouch at that. He actually had a pretty okay season, if I remember correctly, last year in terms of receiving. You know, there's a sticky situation in Cincinnati, obviously, with its receiving options currently, but you have guys emerging around there. So, you know, they brought in a tight end in Jaceki. They, you know, what's his name? The Ilyasova. I can't even think of how to pronounce his name off the top of my head.
Yoshibis.
Yeah, whatever it is. There you go. I think I just named some hockey player from 1993.
I was gonna say, I think the Bucks had a stretch power forward that I think was Ilyasova.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, that's a Bucks for Andre Ilyasova. Yeah.
It's been a long day, boys. So looking at that and going back, you know, I wouldn't be shocked if it's a split. Yeah, is Chase Brown probably the future? Yeah, is Zack Moss going to spell him for a little bit and probably keep him fresh for longer than we all want? Yeah, probably. You don't bring in a guy like that and give him some decent money to just be there. So he is going to get worked in regularly. Now, I think, if you see a hot hand scenario, given the game, there might be, it might get a little leaned on week to week. If I'm a betting man, I don't see either of them emerging through the early part of the season and taking on some kind of, full-time 70-30 split kind of role. So that's pretty much probably where I am on the Cincinnati backfield.
Yeah. Jeff, I'm assuming that you're still in on Chase Brown, or are you in on Chase Brown?
Yeah, I do like Chase Brown. I think that we're hearing positive things out of camp about Chase Brown. And Matt talked about him catching a lot of passes. You see, he does have the explosion. I know he was the second fastest ball carrier with the ball last year behind DK Metcalf. So he is kind of one of those. We've done running back episodes, and we talked about these guys that can score from 50 yards away. I think Chase Brown does have that ability. I think Zack Moss would be the goal line back. I think my biggest concern would be I'm in the back of my mind, I'm wondering about Samaje Perine. And if Samaje Perine is released in Denver, and if the Bengals go out and sign Samaje Perine, that would really concern me, because I think that all three backs would play at that point, and I think it's really difficult to put a back in a three-headed committee into your fantasy lineup.
I know. I flipped back and forth on how I feel about it. You always think about the trades that you don't make, and I had basically a third round pick for Chase Brown, and I rejected it because I just didn't think he's going to be anything. Definitely feel like I'm eating Regretti spaghetti now. What would you buy Chase Brown for, Jeff?
A contender second probably is kind of where I would lean there. I think if I'm a rebuilder, I don't know that I would really want to be stepping into this backfield or having a running back in this type of situation on my roster. But if I feel like I'm a contender and maybe I'm looking for a running back 3, maybe I'm looking for, I'm feeling good with my flex positions and I just have that opportunity to ship out a second, maybe I get back a fourth with Brown or something like that. But that's kind of where the value is in my mind.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, it was a 2024 third, and that's why I didn't want to do it. I was like, I'm getting Jonathan and Mingo in the third, and
could have turned that into Calmy Vidal or something like that. Go.
Oh yeah, it's like I could even have another Chase Brown.
What's better than one?
Yeah, exactly. We'll take it to Denver. I hate Sean Payton. Let me put it this way. I hate Sean Payton press conferences because I don't. Is he the most honest man out there, or is he BS? I don't know. He's kind of like a politician sometimes. You just run in his mouth. Some of it's true, some of it's not. Most of it's just a litmus test on how you feel as a person. And like Sean Payton just says the wildest stuff. But apparently there is news that is not from Sean Payton about Greg Dulcich. He looks good. Is that true? Because he's not Greg Dulcich's guy.
I mean,
Or excuse me, Greg Dulcich is not Sean Payton's guy. Reverse that. Sorry.
Reports so far that his hamstrings are intact. So I mean, that's the first.
That's a start. Yeah.
Maybe he saw Christian Watson's guy, and they're just on the magical path back to health. But no, he's looked fine. Do I think he's going to be some revolutionary fantasy player? No, probably not. But a 605 guy is probably not out of the question if he stays healthy. There's a perfect example. Obviously people love to think of how great the tight end's going to be because of Sean Payton and Jimmy Graham. Everyone just puts those two together. Jimmy Graham is not this guy. Let's squash that. But that doesn't mean that he can't be serviceable as a tight end in certain scenarios, assuming he stays healthy. He's a guy that's going to get you 4 for 40 and the occasional touchdown. Is that what you want? Probably not. Is it a bye week filler? Yeah, you probably do worse. But that's probably where we stand right now. I will not get on any kind of hype train for this guy, but I do like him as a football player. I love him as a football player. I don't love him as a fantasy player.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, he's been cheap enough that like I've kept the shares that I've had. I've drafted a couple of best balls, cause like the shares because he's there. I know David Gotieri. He's like a known tight end guy. He's beat the drum on Greg Dulcich, because as a rookie he had kind of a great season in comparison, to his outliers. But then again, last year, like you said, he had the Miles Austin hamstrings going on, and that's just no bueno. Jeff, are you buying any of this?
I don't think they trust his blocking, to be honest. I think they
Yeah.
like Lucas Kroll as a blocker. And I think Denver in general, I'm hearing way too many names for Denver, I feel like, where
Josh Reynolds.
Josh Reynolds, Devon Vele, you're hearing Troy Franklin, you're hearing Marvin Mims, you certainly still have Cortland Sutton. And if you're not, I don't think they're going to be a good offense. So if you're not going to be a good offense and you're telling me 6 different wide receiver names, that I'm just not going to have any of them on my fantasy roster. I feel like, and that's where I think that they do not. I don't believe that they see Dulcich as a 3-down tight end. I think that they want to have a rotation there with Kroll, with him covering the blocking, and I think Adam Troutman is still there too, isn't he? And
I'm done with that.
Well, he's not going to be anything for fantasy, but he's legitimately one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. And so that's where you just have other areas to not have these players on the field. And outside of Cortland Sutton, I just think that there's too many names being mentioned in Denver to really feel like there's one to emerge right now.
I know this isn't on the sheet, but like running backs too. It's like this is an offense that I want nothing a part of in Dynasty. There's like I am not spending a lot of money on or a lot of asset or anything on the Broncos, and like even in best ball, my least favorite rosters are like the super flex leagues where I'm like, okay, my third QB stack situation is Bo Nix and whatever trash falls to me. That's kind of where it's at. It's just like, okay, well, here's some correlation for the sake of it. I hope it does something, but I'm not really into it. And that's kind of brings it back. It's Sean Payton, man. I don't know what he's doing. I don't think he knows what he's doing either. I don't think like I don't think like I think he got Drew Brees and he's like, oh my God, this kind of worked out. And like Matt, you said he had Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham was like an all-world athlete. It's like Greg Dulcich is he was a dude that thing happened, So it's just it's pretty wild to me. And you have stuff about Josh Reynolds here, but like we said, what is this team? I don't care. This is a stage 5 freak out for me. Dontayvion Wicks. I've been a known Dontayvion Wicks guy. Only 6 snaps with Love in their was it Friends and Family game or whatever insert game that makes people watch and buy tickets. And he's kind of rotating in as like they're doing like a wide receiver 3 by committee. Right now he's still wide receiver 53. I've invested lots of thirds. I've turned down other less, or I guess at the currently more safe assets to not get him. What do you think about this? Are the Packers kind of the good version? Like they're the reverse bizarre version of the Saints? It's like I don't know what this team is, but I kind of want everything about it. It's like the opposite of what the Broncos are. The Broncos and Saints, like the I guess both teams, Freudian slip for Sean Payton.
So I talked about this at length not long ago. You want Jordan Love on this team.
Yeah,
that's the reality. We get asked this a lot through comments, through whatever we run into, and it's, well, who do I want to own on the Packers? Like who's the guy this year? If I'm the Packers, why the hell am I doing anything different than I did last year on offense? It worked. So why am I going to fix something that's not broken? Yeah, now you just add in a guy like Wicks who's having a great summer. You now can rotate your guys more frequently, keep them fresh. Everyone gets 800 yards and 6 touchdowns, and we all go home at the end of the day happy. The talent, they have an abundance of talent at receiver. Now, we all know, and I love how everyone makes a huge deal of going from 16 games to 17 games, and we got to keep guys fresh. We didn't have to keep guys fresh for 16 games, but we got to keep guys fresh for 17 games.
It's one too many, man. It's one too many.
In 18, their legs will fall off. So,
Yes.
if you're a believer in that philosophy and that scenario, then yeah, Wicks is ultra valuable to the Green Bay Packers. Is he ultra valuable to, you winning your week? Yeah, he's going to have great weeks, but so is every wide receiver on that team. And if you have some Packers crystal ball, anyone out there, please send it my way, because I would love to know who the guy is going to be each week, because you have two talented tight ends on that team as well that are going to demand targets. You have Marshawn Lloyd, who's catching balls out of the backfield every single practice. Jordan Love is the only guy I'm touching on the Packers for the foreseeable future.
Guys, I have to break this now, and I'm going to flip-flop episodes. Like, I'm going to make sure this one goes out tomorrow. There's been a framework deal between the Browns and Patriots from Brandon Aiyuk, according to NBC
Browns
49ers.
The Browns?
Yeah.
Browns
the 49ers?
Yeah, like there's a framework for either of them. The reason why he can choose which team he wants to play for.
Dang, that's a Browns pickup if it happens.
Yeah, I don't know how true this is, but anyway, sorry to derail that, but like that's kind of worst case in season scenario. As a Pats fan, I want it to happen. I don't think he'll play there though. Would you rather live in Boston or Cleveland? I don't know.
Dude, the mistake by the lake. Come on, man.
The mistake by the way.
I know my boy up in Buffalo has heard that one before. So.
I actually live in Columbus, and I would take Columbus 10 times out of 10 over Cleveland. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Well, I just lost all our Cleveland followers on that one. So.
They are passionate. Our buddy Joey Wright like appropriately raked Deshaun Watson, and now he's scum in Cleveland. He's just scum. Sorry to derail that, guys. I'm a fan just like you, and I have to talk about stuff, and this is our show. So, anyway, back to the Packers. It's like you said. I think I worry about Reed the most because he's the most expensive, and then I think I should be higher on Christian Watson. But like Jeff or Matt, did we have any info on Christian Watson, or is he still just this mystery man that we don't know who's incredibly athletic?
I mean, I think that he's been healthy, and that's all that's really mattered. I think I don't think it's as complicated as people are making it, to be honest. It's just not the answer that we want. And I think that it's Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs on the outside with Dontayvion Wicks working in there and Jaden Reed in the slot. And then they're going to be rotating through playing two tight ends as well, because they have two good tight ends, and Bo Melton will get some snaps. And I mean, that's it basically. And I think that Romeo Doubs I like Romeo Doubs. He's not exciting at all, but I think he's got a great chance to be 800 to even 1,000-yard receiver with 8-ish touchdowns. And, I mean, we saw last year Jaden Reed as a rookie. And I think a lot of where it runs into is we're wired to see Jaden Reed come in as a rookie and have 800 yards and 8 touchdowns and think, well, that's going to be 1,011 next year because that's how rookies work. And then if that's going to be 1,011 next year, then where's that coming from? And I think it's just, Christian Watson has the explosion to be able to win vertically. I think Christian Watson, he's their best athlete by kind of a lot, and he gives them a lot more with the ball in his hands. Doubs is just kind of the quiet producer, and then Jaden Reed is the gadget type player, and then Dontayvion Wicks can kind of morph and play any of the spots that they need him to.
Yeah, it's just like, and it's like you said, Matt, why would they do anything different? It's like a lot of teams, we see them have a wide receiver too, and you're like, well, they need a wide receiver one. But I've never seen a team have 4 wide receiver 2s and then 2 decent tight ends. So it's just like, like we don't have a wide receiver 1, but we can actually recreate it in the aggregate. That's like officially where they actually are. Like it's a difference between having shallow depth and then deep depth with no high end. But that's enough Packers talk. We're going to go to the Panthers. Jeff, we already kind of have talked about this a little bit. And we talked about Xavier Legette and Jonathan Mingo. Xavier Legette's currently the wide receiver 46. Jonathan Mingo is the wide receiver 85. I told you that Xavier Legette, this latest injury it's strike 5 for me. I don't like. I've already not liked him. He's just been so cheap. Where I'm like, okay, whatever. Jonathan Mingo, I told everyone he was doo doo as soon as he was drafted. Like that dude's garbage. Like I don't know what the Panthers are doing, but I'm out. Like he's like not good at all. Matt, do you think Legette's a problem? And I don't mean that in the way the cool kids mean it. Yeah, like, I mean he's like actually a problem.
I'm not cool, so I would have just gone with the original thought there. Do I think he's a problem? No. I think he's going to be a guy, to your point, you know. He's going to get opportunity. We just talked to Mike Kay of the Charlotte Observer, and he very quickly tempered expectations on Legette year one, and that you shouldn't have any, essentially. There's Adam Thielen gets to move back into a role that he's actually pretty damn good in. And yeah, people for some reason think this guy's 45 years old and dragging his leg on every route. If we look back, he had a pretty good connection with Bryce Young last year for a good stretch. And when the offense all fell apart, it all fell apart. But you bring in Deontay Johnson, you draft this kid. He doesn't have to be great year one. The reality is Carolina still is not going to win ball games most likely this year.
No way, dude. Get out of here.
They don't care. They're not trying to win this year. They're not going to rush Brooks back. They're not going to do anything crazy. They just want to see progression in Bryce Young for the future. So if Legette can help him out in some way, shape, or form, yeah, he'll be out there. But they really, even though their tight ends are kind of banged up, they really like those guys as well. Ian Thomas has been pretty decent when he's been on the field. Jatavion Sanders has come on strong the last 3 days specifically. Really the first hype I've seen of him this camp, but he looked pretty good. Obviously a rookie, so we'll temper it. But to go to the Mingo's free. If by some chance he resurrects and Terrence Marshall's dead, Mingo could be the new Terrence Marshall, or he could find his way. I mean, he was terrible by most metrics last year. But man,
he's terrible as a rookie by most metrics. Like as a rookie prospect.
Yeah, he was terrible. Metrics across the board, terrible. But he's picked up the offense, and more importantly, he's picked up what the Carolina Panthers think he's capable of doing, and he's quote unquote shined in that role through training camp. Again, this could be a 603 guy, and that would be a huge win for this offense. So for fantasy, yeah, he probably stinks. For the Carolina Panthers, he's probably a stepping stone. But again, he's free. Maybe he has a random week that he blows up, or maybe you're just so destroyed you need a bye week guy. You can probably do worse.
Yep. That's like you said. He's still a valuable. He's a discount play. Yeah, like he's like, I'm not gonna say that he's a discount play at cost. It's like again, like he's dead to me in Dynasty because all I could talk about is best ball. It's like I will buy him a best ball because it costed me $5 and I never have to think about that team again. Like essentially, like that's the only reason why. Jeff, to kick it over to you, I'm gonna give you a real scenario. You have to buy one of these players. There's a gun to your head. And there's this random demon that comes out of here. It's like you have to buy a Panthers receiver, and it can't be good. Would you rather buy?
Gun.
Yeah. Would you rather have the Xavier Legette, or would you rather at cost, or would you buy Jonathan Mingo? Like this means is Jonathan Mingo just so useless that you just rather not have him, or is Xavier Legette so risky that you would rather just risk nothing on Jonathan Mingo?
I'd rather risk nothing on Jonathan Mingo at this point. You're talking about wide receiver 46. I mean, that's still a top 10 round-ish startup pick on Xavier Legette, and Mingo you can get in the last round or so. I mean, maybe not now because he's picked up a little bit of steam, but I mean, this is Deontay Johnson's offense. Like, this is going to run through Deontay Johnson. We saw how Bryce Young hyper targeted Adam Thielen last year, and Thielen, probably Mingo, maybe Legette will be starting, but everything's going to be running through Deontay Johnson, I think. And that's going to be, especially if you're in half point or full point PPR, he's still a sleeper, even though people are saying he's a sleeper. I mean, usually when people start saying somebody's a sleeper, they're no longer a sleeper. He's still a sleeper. I think that the volume, I mean, he could be flirting with the league lead in targets, I feel like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's enough on doo-doo wide receivers. I would rather spend my time on doo-doo running backs. Let's talk about Trey Sermon. Jeff, you have here clear RB2 in Indy. Keep trade cut RB69. Giggity. Sorry, Joe. Matt, do you like Trey Sermon at all as
Yes.
RB2? You do. Oh
Yeah,
my
I
God.
mean,
That was an easy yes. That was like weirdly easy.
it's been very strange with Trey Sermon. Obviously, his journey is not the ideal path to success, but he has kind of cemented himself. As of right now, cement can be destroyed as the RB2 in Indy. And that's a pretty decent offense to be a part of for fantasy reasons. If, God forbid, something happens to Jonathan Taylor this year, it's going to be a good chunk of the Trey Sermon show. And I'll tell you, I'll take any starting running back on any team in the NFL on my fantasy team. I don't care if it's best ball, redraft, dynasty, some format I don't even know about. I'm a believer. I mean, I know that's what his third team, maybe, right? San Francisco, Philly,
Philly, yeah,
Indy,
it's the
third team. I mean, I gotta believe the guy's there for a reason. He's been getting the reps constantly, so it's not like it's just been, oh, he's the RB2 now. It's been all off season. So I think he's proven himself. I think he's worked at it. The talent was clearly there at some point, or someone saw it for him to be drafted where he was. He wasn't a metric disaster. So it is interesting that he did kind of flame out, and now he's reemerged as an RB2 on a depth chart. But I do think that this is I think he holds that spot, and I think there can be value in that spot.
Yeah, and I saw it on the tape. He looked like an explosive player that a team could look at and make something out of. I never quite understood it. But Jeff, I'll kick you the question. Do you want Trey Sermon? Let's say he is the RB2. And that's not about him as a player, but does that position RB2 in Indianapolis hold value?
I think it holds a ton of value. I don't think Zack Moss was any different in Indianapolis than what he was in Buffalo. I just think he got some strong volume, but I think that that's a great offense. I really believe in Shane Steichen. And you look at Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon was dominant his second half of his 1 year at Ohio State, and he got injured early on against Alabama in the national championship game. And that was the weird COVID year that like people just don't really remember that year, because we all have it's kind of like when you have a baby and you black out the first 6 months of the baby's life, so you'll have a baby again. I feel like that 2020 football season, and especially for the college football season that got chopped in half, is basically the 6 months of having a baby where you just don't forget anything. But Trey Sermon was very, very good in his 1 year at Ohio State. I think that San Francisco was just a terrible landing spot for him because he just doesn't fit that scheme at all. I think he's a little bit more of a patient runner, whereas San Francisco, Elijah Mitchell was the complete opposite. Elijah Mitchell was just going to hit the hole hard and not even care what's there. He's going to do exactly what Kyle Shanahan would tell him to do. Whereas Sermon is a little bit more patient, and I think that sets up pretty nicely working with Anthony Richardson in that type of an offense. And I believe in Shane Steichen, and I think that this Colts offense is one that you want pieces of.
Interesting. I have changed my thoughts on Trey Sermon because I was just like, do I want the RB2 in an offense where he's going to be third in the pecking order? in rushing touchdowns but that's like best case scenario.
Well, you're
That's
not going
not
to
big as
play him unless Jonathan Taylor's out of the lineup. So
I guess that's why I just try not to get those guys though. I want guys that are going to at least play and get like some touches, and then if someone else gets injured or misses time or something like that, then they're gonna get a full time. Like I'm talking about like the Tajay Spears, the Najee, stuff like that. You know, the Jalen Warrens. That like hoping it for an injury is the type of player I want. A guy like Dylan Laube, which is a perfect segue. I think that Dylan Laube has a role right away. I think that the new kickoff helps. I don't know. I don't have any statistics on it, but I think it gives a little bit more explosive plays, and he's the only one that fits multiple things. Every time I talk about him on the show, I bring up how Amir Abdullah is someone that I'm always surprised at every time I bring up his name. Matt, Dylan Laube, you said he's top tier for you. Like, make me feel good.
I mean,
Confirm my bias.
we met the kid at the Senior Bowl. He was nothing but a joy to talk with, converse with. Just his mindset, his humbleness. I mean, he's not been shy about knowing he has to work for whatever he's going to achieve. You know, which was what also was really interesting, and you know, depending on how much you buy into it. But Coach Pierce has been pretty reliable from what I've seen so far. He literally said on Friday that the running back competition is wide open, which, you know, White has been fine. There's been minimal news on White because he's been fine. But, you know, you have a very unique scenario here with a running back that's going to be on probably get a lot of check down scenarios in Las Vegas this year. And we're probably going to see a lot of 12 personnel, you know, and I just think that when things get rough, you know, Bowers might be great. Adams, I'm sure, will be fine. He's basically QB proof. But man, this kid is going to have a role. I mean, it could be, you know, I don't want to date myself too much, but like it could be as awesome as like a Danny Woodhead scenario with the Chargers. You know, I think that's a perfect world, but I don't see why it's not possible. They're not going to be throwing the ball to White a ton. They're definitely not throwing the ball to Madison. You know, it's if he can carve out that kind of third down role and be productive and be on the field at the same time as other running backs, I think you got a pretty nice player, especially at his value. My goodness. Again, essentially free.
I'm gonna buy even more. I'm gonna buy even more. Jeff, we've kind of talked about this. Um, what's crazy, we're not doing our job. He's still RB66, which is great for you guys listening. It's wild, man. Like for real, this show, like the last couple of shows, this has given me life because, like you said, it's like second Christmas, training camp. I'm like, I haven't really made a trade in a while. Now I'm getting like the crackhead itch. I'm gonna go get 100% Dylan Laube exposure. I'm already too deep. Like what? I'm already 80%. What's 20 more? Yeah, like what's 20 more? Like I just don't even care. What kind of trades are you putting together for Dylan Laube, or what are you willing to pay? Do you think he's worth 2025 second rounder at this point?
And
Saw you, Jeff.
feels aggressive. To me, it reminds me a lot of with a third. If I can get him for a third, I'll probably do that. It reminds me. I mean, you guys are the Patriots fans. It reminds me of like when you guys had those. Like you'd have Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, and then like James White. And like in fantasy, Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis would be getting 20 rushes for 65 yards, and he would have 6.5 PPR points. Meanwhile, James White would catch 7 passes for 48 yards, and he would have 13 PPR points. And I just feel like that's what this backfield's going to be. I think that Zamir White is going to be one of those guys that he gets 70 yards a week. Maybe he gets a touchdown. Maybe he catches 1 or 2 passes, but you're getting like 9 PPR points. And then Dylan Laube will catch 5 balls in the last drive of the game for 42 yards. And all of a sudden he's got the same amount or more than Zamir White. And I mean, when you look at the relative cost, I want Laube all day. And I think that I don't know that I expect the Raiders to be a good football team. I mean, the defense played a lot better at the end of last year. We really played inspired football under Antonio Pierce, but I do think that they're going to throw the ball of a lot more than maybe what people realize, because you have Devontae Adams, you have Brock Bowers, you have Jacoby Myers, good pieces. I don't know that they're going to be a run team. I don't know that they're going to be running the clock out, and that's going to be Dylan Laube in the game.
Yeah, and it's I mean, you're selling it to me. And then again, these are the type of players that I'm okay having in a poor offense because that passing volume is just a safety floor. It's just kind of
Yep.
like rushing QBs in fantasy. If you can rush the ball, you don't even have to be that good. Justin Fields was statistically like the worst quarterback to ever put on a Chicago Bears uniform, according to some people on Twitter. But like he still was excellent in fantasy. So it's kind of the same scenario. I'm still buying, and I'm like kind of 100% serious about just beginning. And again, I think you're right. A second is still a little aggressive. I'm still trying to get him in a passive and like a throw-in deal, kind of like Sam Wagman, our colleague here. I've been trying to buy him for months, and I'm just gonna do the slow, insidious grind down the stone. I will get Laube eventually, and he will let it go. So, more on that later. We'll move on to the Rams. Puka Nacua. We already kind of talked about injury on a different episode, but I think that Puka Nacua is gonna have a down year. By down year, I mean that I think he probably hit a ceiling, and that is realistic. Jeff, you've been pretty high on Demarcus Robinson. We saw Demarcus Robinson be a real thing at the end of last year. And moreover, we see a lot of 12 personnel. So, Matt, where are you at on the Rams wide receiver group and this offense in general? Do you think that we're going to see a little less concentrated targets?
So oddly enough, just talked to Jordan Rodriguez of The Athletic this past week, and this is a big part of our conversation. And I thought the most interesting thing she said that relates to Nacua is that Cup said he has something to prove this year, and that Triple Crown season really wore him down and wore him out both physically and mentally. He's back. And the connection with Stafford isn't going away. Those guys are got some crazy synergy. Obviously, Nacua is a great talent, but I think to your point, there's almost no way he repeats. So a letdown is probably an inevitable situation, just based off of volume. I mean, there was games last year, and I don't have the numbers up in front of me, but I multiple double-digit targets multiple times, just getting fed the ball, kind of Cup-esque. So you could see games where it's a Cup game. You could see games where it's a Nacua game. Kyron and Blake Corum are no slouch at catching the ball either. We saw a lot of that happening last year, which is kind of a new thing for Stafford. But it worked, and the Rams are a good team, and I think they're going to be a good team again this year because of those offensive pieces. Demarcus Robinson is super intriguing to me. He's a wide receiver 3 on a team that can support a wide receiver 3 when you need it. And he's a great pickup if something does happen in Nacua or Cup this year. I mean, he finished last year about as strong as any wide receiver 3 could. He was playing, I want to say it averaged around 88% of the snaps the last, 4 or 5 weeks if you don't count the last week. That's a big deal. Do we see him move to more 12 personnel this year? I think from what Jordan said and from what we've seen, yeah, they like Kobe Parkinson, they like Dennis Allen, and then there's another tight end behind them that's actually having a decent year or summer as well.
Hunter Long.
Do I see them? Who is it?
Hunter Long.
Yeah, thank you. They've all caught passes well in practice. They've all had a decent connection. I don't think 12 personnel they're randomly going to morph into this 12 personnel team. It doesn't make any sense with the talent they have around. But man, if Demarcus Robinson's wide receiver 110, I'm buying all day. Like the fact that Mingo's ahead of him and by 35 spots, that's wild. Absolutely wild. Um, I feel like we said it 25 times now. Like, that guy's free. This guy's whatever free plus is. So yeah, I think he's a strong buy. I think, again, we never, and you guys said this, we never wish for injury, but we have to plan for injury. And that's part of a good fantasy manager, is to always have that next step, that next plan, both with NFL health and obviously your fantasy team. So for a guy like that, that's tremendous value in my eyes.
I've been doing podcasts for 2 years at this point now, and I've never talked about a wide receiver 110 and been legitimate, like, hey, this guy is something, but like legitimately he is something. Um, Jeff, again, to just kind of kick off the Rams, we talk about regression. This is kind of the same thing for Kyron as well, where I think a lot of those dump offs resulted in that there's no one else to catch targets. Tyler Higbee has been force fed everything that he's had. He hasn't earned. You want to talk about like targets are earned? Tyler Higbee's never earned a target in his life. He's just kind of like fell out and like succeeded that way. Like I fell for the Tyler Higbee stuff like everybody else. But with Kyron, you got to think that he's going to take a step back. And again, even if he's still the guy, just by the nature, just by how the rest of the targets are. So like you still have him in wide receiver 3, or excuse me, round 3 in drafts right now. You mentioned like last episode that you've been taking a lot of Kyron. Do you think there's going to be another buy window
on Kyron Williams?
Yeah,
maybe. That we just did that episode a week ago, but to be honest, I did a lot of training camp covering the Rams for Football Guys, and from what I've taken away from Blake Corum is they weren't going to give him the role like with Kyron Williams. He had to go out and take it, and he has. And so that's where it's kind of one of those things on he has done enough that he is going to play. And, Matt called out Jordan Rodriguez. She is awesome. She does a fantastic job. And for The Athletic, her coverage from the Rams, I think, is better than any beat reporter on The Athletic on any other team. And so she goes deep into fantasy positions. She knows what she's doing, and she knows her audience. And she did a whole article on the tight end room, and it was really interesting how they're kind of looking and using those differently. She's been on Demarcus Robinson from day one, and that he's really locked down the wide receiver 3 role in this offense. And if you think about the Sean McVay offense, you think about the Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp teams, Sammy Watkins teams, like they've had 3 wide receivers in the past. Last year, it was hyper-focused to really Puka Nacua because of the injury to Kupp, and they've had a hyper-focused to Kupp in the past. I think that Demarcus Robinson it's wild to me, the way that I've seen so many people just reflexively say it can't work. He's 30 years old and he's never done anything. This is a joke. Like, what are you talking about? And that's not reality. And he has been productive for the Chiefs in windows, and he was very good last year for the Rams. There was not smoke and mirrors. He was good.
And I guess my point on Kyron was like it was the passing volume is what I was saying. It's just like legitimately there won't be like but
he didn't have big passing volume though last year for a lot of the season. Like there were some games where he had a lot of targets, and there was other games where he just wasn't involved in the passing game at all. So that's where I'm nervous now on Kyron Williams, because the early reports that I had seen was, hey, it's his entire backfield, just like it was last year. And we had talked about the schemes for the Rams last week, how they like to have that 3-down skill set. They put a lot on Blake Corum to develop in the passing game, and he has done that this offseason.
Yeah. We'll kick it over to the Titans again, and we had an injury episode, or that's going to come out here pretty soon, and we talked about DeAndre Hopkins is kind of a dead dynasty asset at this point. But really, again, when you talk about these cheap wide receivers, Treylon Burks is wide receiver 91 right now. I talked to you pre-show, Matt. I'm from Arkansas, so I overdrafted Treylon Burks knowing all the things that I know because I had hope. Do you still have hope, or do you think he's dead? Do you think there's anything that merits to have hope for him at this point, or do you think it's a little bit of smoke?
So I live in Nashville, so I hear about how, everyone's, couch, film watching of Treylon Burks. Personally, I know this is probably going to make a lot of people sad, but I am out on him. I do believe that an early camp report that said he's going to have to show something more than just being a receiver to be something on this team. I think that's still going to hold true. I mean, you don't go out and get Ridley and Boyd if you don't think you need them or don't know you need them. Let's change that completely. You need them. And Levis has worked pretty damn good in camp. So he's been able to get those guys the ball. Hopkins is obviously going to be Hopkins. Yeah, he might fall off a little, but if you're a contender and you need a bye week guy, I'm sure you can do much worse than DeAndre Hopkins picking him up. I don't know what he would cost you. That's definitely not my specialty, but I'd imagine that's a nice little ad here and there for a championship run. But no, I am out on Burks. I'm actually more a believer in Phillips than I am a Burks at this point.
Kenny Phillips?
Kenny Britt, maybe? We making a resurgence? Kyle Phillips.
Kyle Phillips, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he'll get injured, unfortunately, in 3 weeks into the year after some amazing separating on a curl route. But, he's in that, it's him and Burks kind of in that weird little limbo wide receiver 4, 5, 6 range. It's kind of the mess on the Titans currently. But Treylon Burks is wide receiver 91. I mean, he should be below Demarcus Robinson. That doesn't make any sense. I'm just fully out. I think if you can get something for him, you get something for him, you cut your losses.
Jeff, do you agree?
Yeah, I think so too. I really do. I don't know. We just haven't seen him understand how to play wide receiver, and I know that. I reading some camp reports. There was one today that I read that Brian Callahan said he's doing what they want him to do, but that doesn't mean to be an impact player. That means he's doing what he want him to do to not get cut. Basically, I'm kind of more curious about the tight ends because. One, I don't know if they're going to be a big part of this passing offense, but I think everybody's kind of been on Chigakonkwo, but Josh Wiley kind of was taking that job from Chigakonkwo last year. And now that we know that Matt's on ground zero here, like, what do you know about the tight ends?
I wish I could tell you I had some remarkable insight here, but I do agree that Wiley is intriguing. Chig, I think talk radio loves the guy. I don't know why. Like I try and listen to the local guys as much as I can. But if I was going for someone, I'd much rather take the swing on Wiley than I would on Chig. I just, he's one of those guys who just like has a few games, gets hyped. Again, we talked about this with someone else, or I can't exactly remember who it was, but Dulcich had a very promising rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then just kind of didn't do anything the next year. And I mean, one was because he was hurt. Chig played 17 games last year. So really, what's his excuse? In a gross passing offense last year, keep in mind that he couldn't separate himself out of. He wasn't any kind of security blanket or go-to guy last year. Honestly, the tight end position's probably gross, and that's again probably one of the reasons that they brought in multiple talented receivers. But yeah, if you're swing on Jared Wiley, why not?
Interesting.
Josh Wiley, sorry.
Yeah, I was. I mean, there's so many
last
names.
Jared Wiley, though.
Just
grab Jared Wiley though too.
Yeah.
For the
100%. I'm all in on Jared Wiley. I'll just throw that out there right now.
It's like I put in Wilson to search for a name, and I'm like, oh, I forgot there's 40 Wilsons.
It's been like the last 2 days, I've been looking for Joe Newton instead of Joe Milton, and it's been like driving me crazy.
Yeah. And speaking of Wilson, our final guy is Johnny Wilson. The wide receiver 3 position in the Eagles has kind of been again, I keep using the term by committee. It's been wide receiver 3 by committee. Like Josh or Dallas Goedert has kind of been like a handcuff, only shown up when either AJ Brown or Devontae Smith's been out. But since we have a new offense, do we think this is real? Johnny Wilson, I actually liked better than Keon Coleman. I saw a lot more things in Keon Coleman on tape. They were both raw, but I was like, Keon Coleman, there's something, or Johnny Wilson, there's something to work with. Like sometimes they both don't know what they're doing. But as him being the wide receiver 113, do you think it matters and he could have a shot to be the wide receiver 3, Matt?
I mean, the wide receiver 3, and you kind of alluded to this in Philadelphia, has been gross for years.
The Quez Watkins disrespect on this show.
Outrageous. Outrageous. He's probably going to hit you up on Twitter and be very, very angry. That's probably also why he's not in the team anymore.
If Watkins sees this, then we'll send him a gift basket. Edible Rage will be coming to you, Quez Watkins.
We can do a 32 beat writers gift basket for him. We can read his own news every day. Anyways, back to Johnny Wilson. I do think he has the inside track right now to be on the field the most out of every guy that is considered the Eagles wide receiver 3. Do I think there's any value in it? Probably not. Again, we've alluded to this with a lot of these guys. A lot of the guys we talked about today are an injury away from true snap counts and seeing the field going from 30% to 90%. So, they definitely share a lot of those situations. Johnny Wilson, is probably one of those guys, assuming the wheels don't fall off. Campbell's obviously hurt. That kind of opened the door for him. He's done really well. Hurts has been looking his way, which, you want to see that if you're going to get that trust for when your time comes. He's also a huge target. Johnny Wilson running around out there, you can do a lot worse. He's a 6'6" guy. He's a little bit lean for 6'6". I think he's like 220 pounds, so he might snap in half if a safety comes over the top on him. But, he could be a great red zone guy and get those garbage, touchdowns that everyone wants to go to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith that, everyone's going to be angry when they see Johnny Wilson in the red zone. It's I can see a realistic path where this guy walks away from the season with 400 yards and 6 or 7 touchdowns just because he's huge. He's going to be a matchup nightmare down there, assuming everything from camp is true and he can run these routes and whatnot. But if his route tree is kept small and he can separate well, I mean, if you throw a ball up 10 feet in the air, this guy can actually go get it. So, those insane Hurts passes that we saw down the stretch last year that were flying over guys' heads and whatnot, maybe Johnny Wilson tips down one or two of those to himself.
Yeah, and it's like you said, it costs nothing, and I have some Johnny Wilson because it's a taxi spot, and it's like, cool, man, you're going with the other big athletic guys who I think could be something, and if a coach could do it, like, I'll check back in 6 weeks and see if you're going to stay there or not, or I'm going to be cutting you at the end of the year. And it's like, I like the offense, so I think he's like worth the cost of it, but Jeff, you had that face when I say something hot, about a Johnny Wilson more than Keon Coleman. Do you think that's crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's great.
Pre-draft. Okay, thank you. I just needed to hear
Pre-draft,
it.
it's great. Keon Coleman is having a great camp.
Oh,
but
I said pre-draft, not redraft.
it's still crazy. I mean,
yeah, okay.
No. Johnny, I think it's interesting because they've moved Devonta Smith a lot more to the slot. They were really having AJ Brown and Devonta Smith were kind of locked outside. Now they have Smith in the slot. Before, when they had Quez Watkins in that offense, I mean, it's a new offense with Kellen Moore coming in there, but before, when they had Quez Watkins, he was basically a fullback in so much as he just ran a straight line down the field and made one defender come with him so that they were playing with one less defender potentially in the box against Jalen Hurts in that run game. But now they've got Johnny Wilson can be a blocker outside, can allow Devonta Smith to play in the slot. They can just do a little bit more more things formationally with a player like Johnny Wilson. He's just a unicorn. He's just a rare player that you get him on the edge against a 5'8" cornerback. He should be able to block the guy, you would think. And so that it's just kind of some just different football things that they're able to do versus the actually dynasty fantasy relevance. But I mean, you get a player on the field and we see wide receiver gets on the field, they get comfortable, they develop, their team figured out how to use them, and all of a sudden now you've got an 800-yard guy that can catch 8 to 10 touchdowns.
Nope. Yeah, that's I agree, and especially like to the point of like the wide receiver 3 or third target has been like a handcuff position. So Johnny Wilson, like, is he a handcuff? No, not yet, but he could be. So like, and especially at his cost, he's worth the taxi spot. But Matt, we've used you and abused you enough. We're gonna end right there at the hour and 14-minute mark, and especially when we start talking about Johnny Wilson, that's enough. Thank you for coming on the show again, guys. We love that you stuck around that long to get in the weeds. The 32 beat writers, they're the real deal. When we talk about these, like I don't even like calling you an aggregate account because, like Jeff said,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, like you're not an
Don't like
aggregate account. Yeah, you guys just like you do this wild thing. You report the news, and we love you for it. So again, guys, if you like more stuff of this, if you like Jeff's stuff, like, subscribe. If you want a chance to have a premium subscription to footballguys.com, leave us a comment that says 32 beat writers. Love you, and we'll see you on the next one.